This essential guide will help you develop critical thinking skills, essential for effective decision-making and problem-solving, vital to both personal and professional success. You'll learn to identify and overcome biases, question assumptions, open yourself to diverse perspectives, and strengthen your mental resilience. Ideal for students, professionals, and anyone looking to improve and grow, this book will empower you to achieve your goals and thrive in all areas of your life. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to navigate life's challenges with ease, while others struggle with even simple decisions? The answer lies in the power of critical thinking. This transformative skill is the key to unleashing your full potential, both personally and professionally. But what is critical thinking really, and why is it so important in such a fast-paced, information-saturated world? Critical thinking is often misunderstood. It's not about being confrontational or dismissing the ideas of others, but rather about adopting a disciplined approach to thinking that involves analyzing, evaluating, and synthesizing information to form well-founded judgments and decisions. It's the ability to step back from immediate reactions and examine situations objectively, considering multiple perspectives and possible consequences. Many people mistakenly believe that critical thinking is an innate talent. You either have it or you don't. This is far from the truth. Critical thinking is a skill that can be developed and refined over time, like a muscle that grows stronger with consistent practice. By cultivating this skill, you'll be better prepared to solve complex problems, make informed decisions, and face life's uncertainties with confidence. The benefits of mastering critical thinking extend far beyond the classroom or the workplace. In your personal life, it will help you build stronger relationships, improving your communication and empathy. You'll be able to understand different points of view, resolve conflicts, and make decisions aligned with your values and goals. In the professional world, critical thinking is increasingly valued by employers across all sectors. It's the skill that distinguishes leaders and innovators from those who simply follow instructions. As you begin this journey to improve your critical thinking, you'll discover that it's not just about changing the way you think, but about transforming your approach to life. You'll learn to question your own assumptions, challenge your prejudices, and approach problems with creativity and an open mind. This book will guide you through that transformation, offering practical tools, exercises, and insights to develop a critical mindset. In the following chapters, we'll explore the foundations of critical thinking, delve deeper into logical reasoning, and uncover the hidden biases that can cloud our judgment. You'll learn powerful techniques for solving problems, making decisions, and communicating effectively. But before diving into these topics, we must look inward, because to master critical thinking, we must first understand the complex landscape of our own minds. As we conclude this introduction, ask yourself, are you ready to challenge your assumptions, broaden your perspective, and unlock your full potential? The path ahead may not always be easy, but the rewards are immeasurable. In the next chapter, we'll begin exploring the fascinating world of your thought patterns, the first step toward transforming your mindset and achieving profound personal growth. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a vast, uncharted territory. Within its borders lie hidden treasures of wisdom and creativity, but also dangerous traps of prejudice and misconceptions. To navigate this complex landscape effectively, you must first intimately understand its terrain. This is where the journey of critical thinking truly begins, with self-awareness. Self-awareness is the cornerstone of critical thinking. It is the ability to observe your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors as an impartial observer. This skill allows you to recognize patterns in your thinking, identify strengths and weaknesses, and understand how your experiences and beliefs shape your perception of the world. A powerful technique for developing self-awareness is the practice of mindfulness. By practicing mindfulness, you learn to pay attention to your thoughts and emotions in the present moment, without judgment. It can be as simple as taking a few minutes a day to sit quietly and observe the flow of your thoughts. With regular practice, you'll begin to notice recurring themes, emotional triggers, and habitual patterns that you may not have recognized before. Another valuable tool for understanding your thinking patterns is reflective journaling. By writing down your thoughts, experiences, and reactions, you create a tangible record of your inner world. Over time, this record can reveal important information about your decision-making processes, emotional responses, and underlying beliefs. For example, you might notice that you tend to jump to conclusions in certain situations or that you have a habit of magnifying minor setbacks. As you become more aware of your mental patterns, you'll likely encounter some uncomfortable truths. We all have cognitive biases, systematic errors in our thinking that can lead to irrational judgments and decisions. These biases are deeply rooted and often operate outside of our awareness. For example, confirmation bias causes us to seek information that confirms our existing beliefs, ignoring evidence that contradicts them. This knowledge is essential for advancing the development of genuine and effective critical thinking, and is the next step on your path to a more fulfilling and conscious life. Availability bias leads us to overestimate the likelihood of events we easily remember or imagine. Recognizing these distortions in our own thinking can be difficult, but it's a fundamental step in developing critical thinking skills. By accepting that we have biases, we can begin to counteract their influence on our decision-making and problem-solving. An effective way to uncover these hidden biases and assumptions is to seek honest feedback from others. This involves being willing to be vulnerable and open to criticism, qualities essential to personal growth. Ask trusted friends, colleagues, or mentors to share their honest insights about your strengths and weaknesses. Their perspectives can provide valuable insights you might not perceive through personal reflection alone. As you delve deeper into understanding your thinking patterns, you may experience resistance from your own mind. It's natural to feel defensive or uncomfortable questioning long-held beliefs or habits, but that discomfort is a sign of growth. Accepting it is key to developing the mental flexibility needed to think critically. By the end of this process, you'll have a clearer picture of the complex landscape of your mind, although this is just the beginning. As we progress, you'll learn to use this self-awareness as a foundation for developing more advanced critical thinking skills. We'll soon explore the fundamental principles of this thinking and begin to build the tools necessary to navigate even the most complex intellectual terrain. Imagine yourself as an explorer on the edge of a vast unknown land. That terrain is your own mind, and the map in your hands is critical thinking. But, as a good explorer, you need more than just a map, the right tools and skills to successfully navigate this challenging landscape. In this chapter, we'll equip you with the basic tools of critical thinking, logical reasoning, and evidence-based thinking. Logical reasoning is the backbone of critical thinking. It's the process of reaching conclusions supported by solid evidence and arguments. Essentially, it involves identifying premises, the initial information or assumptions, and following their development until you arrive at logical conclusions. Although it may seem abstract, we do it constantly without realizing it. For example, consider this simple syllogism. All cats are mammals. Fluffy is a cat. Therefore, Fluffy is a mammal. It's basic deductive reasoning where, if the premises are true, the conclusion must also be true. As you delve deeper into logical reasoning, you'll learn to construct more complex arguments and detect flaws in reasoning known as logical fallacies. These fallacies are errors that can lead to faulty conclusions even when the premises seem correct. Some of the most common are the personal attack, which dismisses an argument based on characteristics of the interlocutor rather than the argument itself, the false dichotomy, which presents only two options when other alternatives exist, and the slippery slope, which assumes that one event will inevitably lead to a chain of related events without supporting evidence. Recognizing these fallacies will help you not only identify errors in others' arguments, but also avoid them in your own thinking. This skill is invaluable in an age where we are constantly exposed to persuasive messages, from advertising to political rhetoric. But logical reasoning alone is not enough. Critical thinking also demands a commitment to evidence-based thinking, basing our conclusions on verifiable and reliable data, rather than on personal beliefs, emotions, or anecdotes. This involves seeking out high-quality sources, evaluating the credibility of evidence, and being willing to change our minds when presented with new and compelling information. To develop this evidence-based mindset, it's necessary to cultivate certain key attitudes: curiosity, open-mindedness, and intellectual humility. Curiosity drives us to ask questions, seek new information, and explore alternative perspectives. Open-mindedness allows us to consider ideas that might challenge our previously held beliefs. Intellectual humility is the recognition that our knowledge is always incomplete and that we can learn from others, even or especially when we disagree with them. These attitudes form the basis of what we might call a critical thinking mindset, characterized by a willingness to question assumptions, including our own views, a healthy skepticism toward unsupported claims, and a commitment to continuous learning and growth. Developing this mindset isn't always easy. It requires stepping out of your comfort zone, confronting your own biases, and sometimes admitting you were wrong. But the rewards are enormous. With a critical mindset, you'll be better equipped to tackle complex issues, make informed decisions, and engage meaningfully with diverse perspectives. By the end of this stage, you will have understood the fundamental principles of critical thinking, the importance of logical reasoning and evidence-based thinking, and you will be on your way to adopting the attitudes necessary to maintain this mindset. However, understanding these principles is only the first step. To truly master critical thinking, we must learn to apply these skills to one of the biggest obstacles to clear thinking: our own cognitive biases. Imagine you're playing a game of chess, confident in your strategy and anticipating your opponent's moves. Suddenly, you realize that half of the pieces on your board have been invisible to you the entire time. This situation reflects the challenge posed by cognitive biases. They are hidden players in our mental game that influence our decisions and judgments without us even noticing. In this step, we'll illuminate these invisible pieces to help you regain control of your board. Cognitive biases are systematic errors in thinking that affect our judgments and decisions. They are not character flaws or signs of low intelligence. In fact, mental shortcuts, or heuristics, are a natural result of our brain's effort to simplify information processing. These shortcuts are often useful in everyday situations, but in complex contexts that require critical thinking, they can lead us astray. One of the most common and persistent biases is confirmation bias, our tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information that supports our prior beliefs. This is why we quickly accept evidence that aligns with our worldview, while questioning or ignoring evidence that contradicts it. For example, if someone firmly believes that a certain diet is the healthiest, they're likely to enthusiastically share articles that support it while simultaneously dismissing or criticizing studies that suggest otherwise. Another very common bias is the anchoring effect, which occurs when we overweight the initial information we receive when making decisions. This explains why the initial price of a car can be so influential in a negotiation, even if that price was set arbitrarily. The availability heuristic is another type of bias that leads us to overestimate the probability of events we easily remember or can clearly imagine. For this reason, many people fear plane crashes more than car crashes, even though the latter are statistically more frequent and dangerous. Recognizing these biases is the first step to overcoming them. However, being aware of them isn't enough. We need strategies to counteract their influence. An effective approach is to actively seek out information that challenges our current beliefs. This doesn't mean we should change our minds all the time, but it does mean we should fairly consider opposing viewpoints. It's advisable to follow news media or opinion leaders who offer perspectives different from your own. Participating in respectful debates with people who think differently is also very enriching. The goal isn't to win arguments, but to broaden our understanding. Another useful strategy is practicing mental flexibility. This involves deliberately considering other possible explanations or options for a situation. When you notice yourself quickly jumping to a conclusion, pause and ask yourself, what other possibilities am I overlooking? This simple question can open up new avenues of thinking and help you avoid a narrow view. Cultivating the habit of seeking diverse perspectives is also key to combating bias. When making important decisions, Consult with people whose backgrounds, experiences, or knowledge differ from yours. Their perspectives can help you identify aspects you may not have considered and enrich your understanding of the problem. Furthermore, it's essential to develop intellectual humility, recognizing that our knowledge is limited and that we can always learn from others. This attitude makes it easier for us to admit mistakes and change our minds in the face of new evidence. Changing our minds isn't a sign of weakness, but rather of intellectual growth and maturity. As you try to overcome cognitive biases, you'll likely feel internal resistance. These patterns are deeply rooted, and challenging them can feel uncomfortable or even threatening. But that discomfort is a sign that you're stepping outside your mental comfort zone, and that's precisely where true growth happens. By the end of this journey, you should have a clear understanding of the most common cognitive biases and strategies for addressing them. You are developing the mental flexibility and openness necessary to look beyond your own point of view and consider alternative perspectives. However, recognizing biases and thinking flexibly are only part of the critical thinking skill set. To truly master these abilities, you need to apply them to real-world challenges. Are you ready to put your new knowledge and skills to the test? In the next step, we'll explore effective problem-solving techniques, learning how to approach complex issues systematically and creatively. You'll discover how to break down seemingly impossible problems into manageable parts and how to generate innovative solutions. The challenge will become more complex, but also much more rewarding. Imagine standing before a huge tangled knot. At first glance, it appears incredibly complex, with no clear beginning or end. This knot represents the challenging problems we face in life. Overwhelming, intricate, and seemingly unsolvable. But with the right techniques, even the most complicated knots can be untied. The first step in effective problem solving is to clearly define the situation. Often, what appears to be a single problem is actually a set of interconnected issues. Breaking the problem down into smaller, more manageable parts will allow you to more clearly visualize possible solutions. This process is known as problem decomposition, and it's like isolating individual threads in our metaphorical knot. Once you've identified the core elements of the problem, it's time to gather information. This step is essential and often overlooked. Many people attempt to solve problems without fully understanding them, which leads to ineffective solutions. Approach this stage broadly. Explore diverse perspectives, consult with experts if possible, and look for patterns or trends that may reveal root causes of the problem. With a clear understanding of the problem and the necessary information, it's time to generate possible solutions. This is where creativity comes into play. Brainstorming is a powerful tool in this phase. The key to making it work well is to suspend judgment at the outset and allow a free flow of ideas, no matter how unusual they may seem. Remember, sometimes the most innovative solutions emerge from ideas that, at first, seem unrealistic. Once you have a list of potential solutions, it's time to evaluate them. This is where your critical thinking skills really come into play. Analyze the pros and cons of each option, its feasibility, possible outcomes, and unintended consequences. It's important to be as objective as possible during this stage, setting aside personal preferences or prejudices. After a careful evaluation, select the most promising solution and design a plan to implement it. Break it down into concrete steps, assign responsibilities if you're working as a team, and set clear deadlines. But remember, solving a problem doesn't end with implementation. It's essential to carefully observe the results and be prepared to make adjustments if necessary. One of the most powerful tools for problem solving is the ability to reframe the situation. Often, the way we define a problem limits our ability to find solutions. By looking at the issue from different angles or perspectives, we may discover innovative alternatives we hadn't previously considered. When developing your problem-solving skills, you're likely to encounter obstacles. You may feel stuck, overwhelmed, or frustrated. When this happens, remember that these emotions are a natural part of the process. Take a step back, allow your mind to rest, and return to the problem with a fresh perspective. Sometimes, the solution appears when we stop actively forcing it. By the end of this chapter, you should have a solid set of tools for tackling complex problems. You understand the importance of clearly defining challenges, gathering relevant information, generating and evaluating solutions, and implementing and monitoring the chosen strategy. However, effective problem solving is only one part of the broader critical thinking puzzle. To truly master these skills, you must learn to analyze information and arguments accurately and clearly. Imagine you're a detective standing before a tangled intellectual scene. Claims, evidence, and conclusions intertwine in a complex web. Your task is to unravel this web, distinguish truth from fiction, and reveal flawed reasoning. This is the essence of analyzing information and arguments, an essential skill in any critical thinker's arsenal. At the heart of this ability is the ability to break down an argument into its fundamental parts. Every argument, no matter how complex, can be divided into three basic elements: claims, premises, and conclusions. Claims are statements about what is believed to be true or what should be done. Premises are the reasons or evidence that support those claims. The conclusion is what the argument attempts to prove or persuade us to accept. Consider this simple argument. All dogs are mammals. Pluto is a dog. Therefore, Pluto is a mammal. In this case, all dogs are mammals and Pluto is a dog are the premises, while Pluto is a mammal is the conclusion. By breaking down arguments this way, you can more easily assess their soundness and identify potential flaws. The next step is to evaluate the evidence. This involves asking key questions. Is the evidence relevant to the claim? Is it reliable and from a credible source? Is it sufficient to support the conclusion? It's important to be wary of anecdotes or partially selected data that don't represent the whole picture. As you analyze arguments, you'll notice certain patterns of reasoning. Some of these are valid and strengthen the argument. Others, however, are misleading and weaken it. For example, the pattern of reasoning in the Pluto case, known as a syllogism, is valid. If the premises are true, the conclusion must also be true. However, many arguments employ invalid patterns. A common example is the slippery slope fallacy, which assumes that one event will inevitably trigger a chain of other events without offering evidence of that connection. Another common fallacy is confusing correlation with causation. Just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean one causes the other. For example, there may be a relationship between ice cream sales and drowning incidents, but that doesn't imply that one causes the other. Both could increase during the summer months. As you hone your ability to analyze arguments, you'll also need to be on the lookout for hidden assumptions and implicit premises. Often, what isn't stated in an argument can be as important as what is stated. For example, if someone proposes cutting taxes to stimulate economic growth, they are assuming that tax cuts always generate growth, which is an assumption that deserves critical analysis. Developing these analytical skills requires practice. Start by applying them in everyday situations. Analyze advertisements, political speeches, or newspaper opinion pieces. You'll soon discover that many seemingly convincing arguments don't stand up to close scrutiny. Remember, the purpose of this analysis isn't to win debates or prove others wrong, but to gain a clearer understanding of complex issues and make more informed decisions. By sharpening your analytical skills, you're preparing to navigate more confidently through the sea of information we face daily, distinguishing valuable data from misleading claims. By the end of this chapter, you should feel more confident in your ability to break down and evaluate arguments. You understand the importance of identifying claims, premises, and conclusions, evaluating evidence, and recognizing common patterns and errors in reasoning. However, in an increasingly interconnected world, thinking critically involves more than analyzing individual arguments. We need to be able to engage with a variety of perspectives and synthesize ideas from multiple points of view. Imagine walking into a room where each wall is a distinct color, each representing a unique way of seeing the world. As you move around the room, your perspective changes, revealing combinations of tones and hues you hadn't noticed before. This kaleidoscope of perspectives resembles the diversity of opinions we find in our global society. Exploring and understanding these different points of view can enrich our understanding and sharpen our critical thinking. The richness of diverse perspectives cannot be underestimated. When we open ourselves to different perspectives, we challenge our assumptions, broaden our understanding of the world, and often arrive at more nuanced and effective solutions to complex problems. It's like adding new colors to our palette. The more colors we have, the richer and more vibrant the picture we paint of reality becomes. However, engaging with diverse points of view isn't always easy. It involves stepping outside our comfort zones and confronting ideas that may challenge beliefs we've long held in stone. This process can be uncomfortable, even unsettling, but it is precisely that discomfort that often leads to profound growth and valuable discoveries. A powerful strategy for cultivating new perspectives is to deliberately expose yourself to sources of information that contradict your preconceived ideas. If you tend to think progressively, read conservative publications, and vice versa. If you work in science, immerse yourself in humanities texts from time to time. The goal isn't to change your mind about everything, but rather to better understand different positions and the reasons behind them. When interacting with different perspectives, it's essential to practice active listening. This means paying genuine attention to what others are saying, rather than simply waiting for your turn to speak. Try to understand not only the content of the message, but also what led that person to think that way. What experiences have shaped their way of seeing things? What values or beliefs underpin their position? Developing empathy is another fundamental pillar when engaging in dialogue with diverse perspectives. Empathy allows us to see the world through the eyes of others, even if we don't share their conclusions. It helps us recognize that most people, regardless of their opinions, try to act according to what they believe is right, based on their own experiences and understanding of their surroundings. A particularly useful technique for fostering empathy and understanding other points of view is the practice of steel manning. Unlike straw manning, where you caricature and undermine another person's argument for easy refutation, the approach of steel manning involves constructing the strongest and most reasoned version of another person's argument, even if you ultimately disagree. This exercise not only allows you to better understand the other person's position, but also strengthens your own critical thinking, forcing you to confront the most compelling versions of opposing ideas. As you develop the ability to interact with different perspectives, you'll find that decision-making becomes both more challenging and more rewarding. You'll have a broader range of options and a more complete view of the potential consequences of your choices. A very effective tool in this process is to assume the role of devil's advocate, either yourself or a member of your team. This involves arguing against your preferred option or actively defending other alternatives. This exercise helps identify potential weaknesses in your initial logic and often leads to more solid and reasoned decisions. It's important to remember that being open to other perspectives doesn't mean abandoning your principles. The goal isn't to achieve a superficial consensus where all opinions are considered equally valid. Rather, it's about enriching your understanding, challenging your preconceived ideas, and arriving at more thoughtful and grounded positions. By the end of this reflection phase, you should have a deeper appreciation for the value of diverse perspectives, as well as some practical strategies for incorporating them into your life. You understand the importance of listening carefully, developing empathy, and combining multiple points of view in your decision-making processes. However, considering diverse perspectives is only part of the process. To truly master the art of making sound decisions, it's necessary to explore a variety of strategies that allow us to navigate even the most complex choices. In the next step, we'll address decision-making techniques that will help you face both everyday challenges and those decisive moments that can change the course of your life, even in contexts marked by uncertainty. Imagine you're at a crossroads, with numerous paths unfolding before you. Each represents a possible decision, and the future landscape is shrouded in fog, uncertain and unpredictable. That's the essence of deciding. Choosing a path without having all the information, without knowing for sure what will happen next. An effective decision doesn't happen in an instant. It's a process that begins by clearly defining the dilemma to be solved, and gathering all relevant information. Although this may seem obvious, many failed decisions stem from a poor formulation of the problem or insufficient data. Therefore, it's vital to take the time to fully understand the nature of the issue and obtain the most relevant information. Once you've collected the data, the next step is to identify and evaluate your options. This is where your critical thinking skills come into play. Consider the possible outcomes of each alternative, both short and long term. What are the risks? What benefits might arise? How do these options align with your goals and values? Don't limit yourself to the most obvious choices. Also consider creative alternatives that may not immediately present themselves. A powerful tool for this analysis is the decision matrix. This technique involves listing the options along with the important criteria for your choice and then assigning comparative scores. This approach helps you objectively compare options and identify which best suits your needs. As you evaluate your options, maintain a balance between logic and intuition. It's essential to analyze facts and data, but don't ignore your instinct. Intuition is often the result of patterns your mind has identified through years of accumulated experience. The ideal is to find a middle ground where both logical reasoning and intuitive wisdom can coexist harmoniously. Another essential aspect of decision-making is knowing how to manage uncertainty. Often, we don't have all the information we'd like. One strategy to address this is scenario planning, imagining different possible futures and evaluating how your decision would play out in each. This practice doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it does better prepare you to face the unexpected, strengthening your ability to adapt and make wise decisions amidst complexity. This can help you identify risks and opportunities you might otherwise overlook. It's also critical to be aware of common decision-making mistakes. One of them is so-called analysis paralysis, which occurs when you get caught up in excessive information gathering and endlessly analyzing options, never making a decision. Remember that, in many cases, making a timely decision is more important than seeking a perfect one. Another common mistake is groupthink, where the desire to maintain harmony or conformity within a group ends up leading to irrational or dysfunctional decisions. To counteract this, it's helpful to encourage divergent opinions and even designate someone to play the role of devil's advocate, challenging the group's assumptions to enrich the discussion. As you develop your decision-making skills, you'll likely face moments when you feel blocked or overwhelmed. In these situations, you can turn to techniques like the 5 whys, which involves repeatedly asking why until you get to the root of the problem. You can also use the Eisenhower matrix, which helps you prioritize decisions based on their importance and urgency. Sometimes, simply changing the way you frame the problem can open you up to new solutions and ideas. The goal of these strategies isn't to eliminate all risks or uncertainties, but rather to help you make informed and well-reasoned decisions that are aligned with your goals and values. Even with the best decision-making process, there will always be a degree of uncertainty. The key is learning to live with that uncertainty and being willing to adapt as new information emerges. By the end of this chapter, you should feel equipped with a variety of tools to improve your decision-making. You already understand the importance of defining problems clearly, gathering information, objectively evaluating options, and managing uncertainty. But effective decision-making is only part of the journey. To truly thrive in such a complex world, we need to develop mental resilience, the ability to adapt, learn, and grow in the face of challenges and difficulties. Imagine yourself as a sturdy oak tree standing tall in the midst of a storm. The wind howls, the rain pounds, but your roots are deep and your trunk remains firm. That is the essence of mental resilience, the ability to face life's storms, bend without breaking, and emerge stronger after adversity. Cultivating this quality is key to improving both critical thinking and overall well-being. Mental resilience doesn't simply mean enduring or appearing strong in the face of problems. It's a dynamic process that involves adapting healthily to difficult situations, trauma, threats, or prolonged stress. Thanks to it, we can recover from failure, learn from it, and even thrive under pressure. The foundation of this resilience lies in understanding and managing our emotions. It's not about repressing what we feel, but rather developing emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions effectively. If we cultivate this skill, we will be able to respond to challenges with clarity and purpose rather than reacting impulsively. A powerful technique for strengthening emotional intelligence is mindfulness meditation. This practice involves focusing your attention on the present moment, recognizing and accepting your thoughts and emotions without judging them. Regular mindfulness practice can help you understand yourself better, reduce stress, and regulate your emotions more effectively. Another fundamental pillar of resilience is developing a growth mindset. This concept, spread by modern psychology, is based on the belief that our abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. Those with this mindset view challenges as opportunities for growth, not as threats to their self-esteem. They embrace mistakes as part of the learning process, rather than seeing them as personal failures. To cultivate this mindset, start by observing your inner dialogue. When faced with a challenge, do you say to yourself, "I can't do this," or "I can't do this yet"? That small difference, that word, "yet," can transform a limited perspective into one of possibilities. Practice reframing setbacks as opportunities to learn and move forward. Resilience is also built with a strong support network. No one thrives alone. Surround yourself with people who encourage you to grow, who listen to you, and who offer perspective when you need it. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, but of courage and self-awareness. When obstacles arise, resilient people adopt active coping strategies. Instead of ignoring problems or hoping they'll resolve themselves, they take concrete steps. This may involve breaking a large problem into smaller tasks, seeking advice or resources, or acquiring new skills to address it. A particularly useful strategy is cognitive reframing, which involves changing the way you view a situation to alter its emotional impact. For example, instead of viewing a job loss as a tragedy, you can view it as an opportunity to rediscover yourself professionally. Shifting your perspective can help you find positive aspects even in difficult times. Remember that resilience is like a muscle. It grows stronger with use. Every challenge you overcome increases your ability to face future difficulties. Approach challenges as opportunities to test and strengthen your inner strength. By the end of this chapter, you should have a clear understanding of what mental resilience entails and have concrete strategies for developing it. You've explored the value of emotional intelligence, growth mindset, and active coping techniques. But there's still more to discover. To fully thrive, we also need to know how to communicate our ideas effectively and engage in constructive dialogue. Imagine you are a bridge builder tasked with uniting two distant shores. These shores represent distinct minds, each with its own landscape of thoughts, beliefs, and experiences. The bridge you are building is communication, the means by which we share ideas, express emotions, and collaborate with others. Effective communication is not just about conveying information, but about creating shared understanding. To achieve this, it's not enough to express your ideas clearly. You also need to actively listen and show empathy toward those around you. This is where critical thinking becomes a fundamental tool, as it helps us analyze and evaluate both our own messages and those we receive from others. One of the keys to effective communication is active listening. This involves paying full attention to what is being said, beyond simply hearing the words. It involves listening with all your senses, observing body language, tone of voice, and offering feedback to ensure the message has been understood. Critical thinking strengthens this skill by allowing us to analyze the speaker's arguments, detect unspoken assumptions, and distinguish between emotional appeals and logical reasoning. When it's your turn to speak, critical thinking helps you organize your ideas and express them in a clear and structured way. Start by precisely defining your main point or argument. Then develop your supporting ideas logically, using evidence to back up your claims. It's also important to consider who you're addressing. What prior knowledge does your audience have? What might their concerns or beliefs be? Another essential aspect of effective communication is the ability to engage in constructive dialogue and debate. This doesn't mean trying to win an argument, but rather exploring ideas together to achieve a deeper understanding. Critical thinking skills are essential in this context, as they allow you to analyze arguments, identify logical fallacies, and separate emotional reactions from rational responses. A powerful technique for fostering constructive dialogue is the Socratic method, which involves asking thoughtful questions that stimulate critical thinking and illuminate ideas. Instead of simply stating your point of view, ask questions that invite the other person to examine their assumptions and reasoning. For example, what evidence supports that idea? Or is there an alternative explanation? People who communicate effectively are also skilled at handling conflict and disagreements. When tensions rise, it's easy to slip into emotional reactions or defensive postures. Critical thinking helps you step back, analyze the situation objectively, and respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Look for common ground, recognize the valid points in others' opinions, and focus on shared interests rather than opposing positions. As you develop your communication skills, pay attention to the power of nonverbal communication. Your body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice often communicate more than words themselves. Critical thinking allows you to become aware of these signals and consider how they might be interpreted by others. Remember that effective communication is a two-way street. It's not just about expressing your ideas clearly, but also about creating an environment where others feel heard and understood. Practice empathy and strive to see things from the other person's perspective. It doesn't mean you should always agree, but understanding others' perspectives can open the door to more productive conversations. In this digital age, it's also essential to apply these principles to written communication. Whether you're writing an email, a report, or a social media post, use critical thinking to ensure your message is clear, well-founded, and appropriate for your audience. Consider the limitations of written communication, such as the lack of nonverbal cues, and compensate for them whenever possible. By the end of this chapter, you should have a deeper understanding of the relationship between critical thinking and effective communication. You've learned the importance of active listening, clear expression, constructive dialogue, and empathy in building strong bridges between people. But effective communication is only one of the many applications of critical thinking. To truly master these skills, you need to see how they apply in real-life scenarios. Are you ready to put your critical thinking and communication skills to the test in everyday situations? In the next chapter, we'll explore how to apply these skills to personal relationships, professional challenges, and everyday decisions, so you can face life's complexities with confidence and wisdom. Imagine waking up one day to discover you've been given a very special pair of glasses. These aren't ordinary glasses. They're critical thinking lenses that allow you to see the world with renewed clarity. Suddenly, you can detect hidden patterns, underlying assumptions, and potential pitfalls in every situation you face. In this new chapter, we'll explore how to apply critical thinking to your daily life, transforming the way you approach personal relationships, professional challenges, and everyday decisions. Starting with personal relationships, whether it's a disagreement with your partner, a misunderstanding with a friend, or a family conflict, critical thinking can help you navigate these complex emotional waters. When tensions arise, use your analytical skills to observe the situation from an objective perspective. Ask yourself, what are the real issues here? Are there unspoken assumptions or misunderstandings that are hindering communication? This approach can make the difference between a hopeless confrontation and a constructive dialogue that strengthens the relationship. Imagine you have a recurring argument with your partner about household chores. Instead of getting caught up in the emotions of the moment, you can apply critical thinking to analyze the repeating pattern of these disputes. Is the issue really about who does the dishes or takes out the trash? Or is it a deeper sense of being undervalued or overwhelmed? The key is to actively listen, with a genuine interest in understanding the other person's perspective, and clearly express your own thoughts and emotions. In the workplace, critical thinking is equally valuable. Whether you're solving a complex problem, making an important decision, or navigating office dynamics, These skills can make all the difference. Start by precisely defining the problem. Gather information from various sources, analyze the data carefully, and generate potential solutions. Imagine your team is struggling to meet project deadlines. Instead of resorting to rushed solutions, use critical thinking to identify the root causes. Are resources lacking? Are processes inefficient? Are expectations poorly defined? Looking at the situation from multiple angles will increase your chances of finding effective and sustainable solutions. As consumers and citizens, critical thinking is essential. In this era of information overload and targeted advertising, it's more important than ever to question the messages we receive. When you encounter a news story, advertisement, or social media post, ask yourself, what is the source? What evidence is presented? Are there alternative explanations or points of view? For example, if you're considering a major purchase, don't rely solely on product descriptions or user reviews. Do your research thoroughly, compare alternatives, and assess the long-term costs and benefits. Similarly, when analyzing political statements or public policy proposals, look beyond the rhetoric to examine the actual evidence and potential consequences. In everyday decision-making, critical thinking can help you choose more clearly, whether it's something big like your career or where you want to live, or something simpler like how to organize your day. Think in a structured way, examine your options, evaluate possible outcomes, and consider your own biases and assumptions. For example, when planning your day, don't react only to what seems most urgent. Reflect on your priorities. Which tasks will contribute most to your long-term goals? How can you use your time and energy most effectively? By applying critical thinking to these types of decisions, you can gradually steer your life toward a more intentional course. It's important to clarify that applying critical thinking in daily life doesn't mean analyzing every tiny decision or becoming paralyzed by overanalysis. It's about cultivating a habit of conscious and reasoned reflection that you can use flexibly as needed. You can start small, for example, by critically analyzing one news item a day or solving a work challenge each week with a structured approach. By doing so, you'll soon find yourself facing ethical dilemmas or complex moral questions. Although these situations rarely have clear answers, critical thinking can help you navigate them with greater clarity and confidence. Imagine standing before a large tapestry woven with threads of different colors and textures. This tapestry represents the complexity of the ethical considerations that underpin our decisions and actions. As a critical thinker, your task is not only to contemplate its beauty, but to understand its patterns, see how the threads intertwine, and learn to integrate your decisions within this ethical framework. Critical thinking is intertwined with ethical reasoning, giving you the tools to address moral dilemmas with clarity and integrity. At its core, ethical reasoning involves determining what is right or good in a given situation. It is a process that goes beyond personal preferences or social norms, delving into fundamental questions of morality. Critical thinking is key to this journey, as it allows you to analyze complex situations, consider multiple perspectives, and arrive at reasoned ethical judgments. A first step in ethical reasoning is recognizing when we are faced with a moral issue. This requires moral sensitivity, that is, the ability to detect the ethical components of a situation. Critical thinking sharpens this sensitivity by encouraging you to go beyond the superficial and consider the broader implications of your actions. For example, suppose you are offered a job with an excellent salary, but the company engages in practices that harm the environment. At first glance, this might seem like a straightforward career decision. But critical thinking would lead you to ask yourself, what impact would this have on the environment? Does this decision align with my values? What are the consequences for society at large of supporting these types of practices? Once the ethical dilemma has been identified, the next step is to systematically analyze it. This is where different ethical frameworks come into play, offering diverse ways of approaching moral issues. One is utilitarianism, which seeks to maximize well-being or happiness for the greatest number of people. Another is deontological ethics, which focuses on following moral standards or duties, regardless of the consequences. Virtue ethics, on the other hand, emphasizes cultivating moral character and personal virtues. And the ethics of care emphasizes the importance of caring relationships and attention to the needs of others. Critical thinking allows you to apply these frameworks effectively, helping you analyze how each one would interpret a situation and identify its strengths and limitations. This way, you can build a more nuanced and personal ethical stance. When reasoning about moral issues, it's important to be aware of common pitfalls, such as moral relativism, which holds that all ethical opinions are equally valid. While it's essential to respect diverse perspectives, critical thinking helps you evaluate the logic behind different moral positions and develop your own informed ethical judgments. This path won't always be easy, but with practice and reflection, you can learn to make more conscious, responsible decisions aligned with your deepest values. Another important challenge is finding the balance between often competing ethical considerations. In real life, many situations involve conflicts between different moral principles. For example, a healthcare professional may face a crossroads between respecting a patient's autonomy and acting to preserve their life. Critical thinking is a valuable tool for analyzing these conflicts, weighing different factors, and arriving at a reasoned decision. Personal integrity is an essential aspect of ethical reasoning. It involves aligning our actions with our ethical beliefs and taking responsibility for our decisions. Critical thinking plays a fundamental role here, helping us examine our motivations, question our own assumptions, and ensure consistency between what we believe and what we do. As you develop your ethical reasoning skills, you'll likely encounter situations where there is no clear or absolutely correct answer. In these cases, the goal of critical thinking isn't to find a perfect solution, but to arrive at a well-founded decision that you can explain clearly and firmly support. This involves carefully weighing the pros and cons, considering the long-term consequences, and being willing to revise your position in light of new information or differing points of view. Remember that ethical reasoning isn't limited to grand, dramatic dilemmas. It also manifests itself in the small, everyday decisions that shape our character and influence those around us. How do you treat people in your daily interactions? How do you balance your personal goals with your responsibilities to others and society? By applying critical thinking to these everyday ethical considerations, you can take a more conscious and principled approach to your life. By the end of this chapter, you should have a deeper understanding of how critical thinking strengthens ethical reasoning. You recognize the importance of moral sensitivity, systematic analysis, and personal integrity in addressing ethical dilemmas. However, mastering critical thinking and ethical reasoning is not a one-time achievement, but rather a continuous path of growth and learning. Now imagine you are a sculptor standing before a block of marble. The sculpture you are creating represents your mind, and the chisel in your hand symbolizes the tools of critical thinking and constant learning. With each stroke, you refine your work, revealing new facets and possibilities. This ongoing process of shaping and perfecting your mind is the essence of lifelong learning and continuous improvement. The journey of critical thinking doesn't end with the last page of this book. In fact, it's just beginning. True mastery comes from constant practice, endless curiosity, and a commitment to personal development. In this chapter, we'll explore strategies for cultivating a lifelong learning mindset and continually sharpening your critical thinking skills. At the heart of lifelong learning is intellectual curiosity, that relentless desire to understand the world around you. Cultivate this curiosity by asking questions, exploring new topics, and challenging what you already know. Get into the habit of delving into areas outside your comfort zone. If you're a scientist, study philosophy. If you're an artist, explore economics. This blend of ideas can lead to groundbreaking discoveries and enhance your critical thinking. Develop a personal learning practice that suits you. This can include setting aside time each day for reading, reflection, or acquiring new skills. Try different methods: online courses, podcasts, practical projects. The important thing isn't to accumulate information, but to actively engage with new ideas and integrate them into your way of thinking. A powerful technique for continuous improvement is deliberate practice, which involves slightly exceeding your current abilities, receiving feedback, and refining your performance based on it. In the context of critical thinking, this might mean tackling increasingly complex problems, engaging in challenging debates, or asking others to analyze your reasoning. Create a personal critical routine that includes, for example, analyzing the news, examining arguments in books or programs, or journaling about complex issues you face. The key is consistency. Make critical thinking a daily habit, and you'll notice progressive improvement. Accept mistakes as opportunities to learn. If you make a mistake in your reasoning or reach an unsound conclusion, don't beat yourself up. Analyze what went wrong, what you assumed unfoundedly, what information you overlooked. By treating each mistake as a lesson, you turn setbacks into steps toward growth. Surround yourself with people who also value learning and critical thinking. Engage in deep conversations, join book clubs, discussion groups, or find a mentor who can challenge you intellectually. Being around curious and thoughtful people can inspire you to continue growing and offer enriching perspectives. As you progress along your path of constant learning, you're likely to encounter obstacles, time constraints, information overload, or moments of low motivation. When that happens, remind yourself why you started this journey. Reconnect with your curiosity and your desire to improve. Sometimes, pausing to reflect on how much progress you've made can rekindle your enthusiasm for continuing to learn. Ultimately, the goal of lifelong learning and continuous improvement isn't to reach an endpoint where critical thinking is perfect, but to embrace the journey itself. It's about finding joy in the process of discovery, questioning, and evolving. By adopting this mindset, you'll find that your capacity for critical thinking expands and opens new doors in all areas of your life. By the end of this chapter, you should have a clear understanding of how to turn critical thinking and learning into lifelong practices. You recognize the importance of curiosity, deliberate practice, and constant reflection in honing your skills. And although we reach the end of this path together, your true journey has just begun. It's time to look ahead and consider how you'll apply the skills you've developed in this book within the changing landscape of the future. In this final chapter, we'll explore the challenges and opportunities ahead, and how the tools you've acquired along the way can serve as a compass to navigate through uncertain times. Imagine for a moment that you are an explorer, contemplating a vast, uncharted landscape. Before you lie unknown paths filled with both promise and challenges, technological revolutions, social transformations, environmental changes, and opportunities we can barely imagine today. On this journey, your map and compass will be the critical thinking skills you have honed with each page you have turned. In this closing lecture, we'll review the key concepts you've learned, reflect on how to incorporate critical thinking into your daily life, and look ahead to the challenges and possibilities that lie ahead. But above all, we'll delve into how these skills will become one of your most valuable resources as you face what lies ahead. Along this path, you have learned to understand and question your own thinking patterns and biases. Analyze information and arguments accurately and clearly. Solve problems using structured and creative approaches. Make decisions with confidence, even in the face of uncertainty. Develop mental resilience to adapt to changes. Communicate effectively and engage in constructive dialogue. Apply ethical reasoning to complex dilemmas. Adopt an attitude of continuous learning and constant improvement. These skills form a powerful set of tools that you can apply in any context. But beyond techniques, critical thinking is an attitude, a way of engaging the world with curiosity, rigor, and openness. As you progress, make critical thinking a daily practice. Begin each day by questioning your assumptions and striving to see things from new perspectives. Face challenges at work or in your personal life with the strategies you've learned. Listen actively, communicate clearly, and when faced with difficult decisions, thoroughly analyze your options and consider their ethical implications. The future will undoubtedly require these skills more than ever. In an era of artificial intelligence, automation, and ever-changing labor markets, the ability to think clearly, solve complex problems, and adapt will be essential. Your ability to reason deeply from an ethical perspective will be key as we confront the dilemmas that arise with technological advances and social changes. Furthermore, in a world saturated with information and misinformation, your ability to analyze claims, evaluate evidence, and draw sound conclusions will be your shield against manipulation and your tool for making well-informed decisions. As societies address global challenges such as climate change, inequality, and technological disruption, critical thinkers like you will be essential for finding innovative solutions and making tough decisions wisely. But perhaps the most rewarding aspect of this journey is the personal growth it entails. As you continue to hone these skills, you'll notice increased confidence in making decisions, greater strength in the face of adversity, and a renewed ability to achieve your goals. You'll gain a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you, which will open new doors both personally and professionally. Remember that the path of critical thinking has no final destination. There will always be new ideas to discover, challenges to overcome, and skills to develop. Open your arms to the constant process of evolution and learning. Let your curiosity guide you, and may the tools of critical thinking be your luggage on this journey through the vast territory of knowledge and experience. As I close this book, I want to leave you with one final thought. The skills you've cultivated are not just tools for your personal success, but a powerful force for making a positive impact on the world. By thinking clearly, communicating effectively, and reasoning ethically, you have the power to influence those around you, enrich important conversations, and contribute solutions to the great challenges of our time. So as you turn the last page and go out into the world, remember this. You possess one of the most powerful tools humanity has ever developed, the ability to think critically. Use it wisely, use it often, and, above all, use it to make a difference. The future is yet to be written. With your critical thinking as your guide, you have the power to contribute to a more just, more reasoned, and more hopeful tomorrow. Thank you for embarking on this journey. Now go forth and think clearly, act intelligently, and never stop learning. The world needs people like you to pave the way for a better future.